What's up? Hey guys, I'm going to show you how to create a 3D website using Spline and Webflow. I'm going to show you a project that I actually did and going to show you all the different steps that I went through to create what I created. Okay, let's dive in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and do a recreation of the Grazza website, but I think that they have the most beautiful product, this incredible olive oil that you can see here. And I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if you could actually kind of have an immersive scroll experience with the actual olive oil itself, okay? So what I did is I kind of did a rough idea of what I wanted. So I've got rocks at the front, and what I want to do is put the 3D version of the olive oil here. I want to do a cool scroll effect of the olive oil, and I thought it'd be good to have more information as I scroll down, and then maybe it'd be cool to have some kind of hover effect over the olive oil with, a video of the 3D turning. And you're like, cool, how the hell do you do all that? Well, it's not as hard as you think. There's this tool called Spline. It's literally free to create 3D assets to start with. And you can do a ton of cool stuff here, right? Like you can do, obviously creating the assets themselves, putting different textures on the assets. You can also do fun things with game controls. You can actually do the animations of the assets within here. But the cool thing about this is it's browser based, so you don't need to download some clunky software. It's obviously free to get started. It's collaborative, so like more people can log in, or if you're creating assets for someone else, you can actually like send them the assets. They also have this insane library of other people's work. So they have a community tab in here. And you can basically remix a ton of people's stuff, which essentially means you can clone it and then do something with it. So this guy, Axie Morris, man, he is so cool. He's the man. So if you want to remix stuff, you can literally like click on things and then remix them. So then how do we create the actual Grazza olive oil itself? So if we go into these are all my files, sorry, a little messy over here, and then if we click into this one. Now, it's important to note that you can remix other people's files, or you can create things from scratch. So I created this from scratch. It's pretty cool. It's pretty realistic. And I'll just give you a little scroll experience. It's basically a lot of different little elements that are combined together to create this effect. So what do I mean by that? Well, you've got the bottle, then you've got the bottle cap, you've got the lid. So this is actually a separate element on top of the main lid. Then you've got these kind of noduly bits. Don't know if you can see here, but you've got these like nodules that are attached to the actual bottle itself, and then you've got the label, which is an overlay. I don't know if you can also see this, but there's this quite nice texture that is on the actual bottle itself, kind of mottled effect. So just trying to create something as realistic as possible. Now this can be done for free if you just spend a little bit of time playing around with this. It's so epic how accessible 3D is. There's tons of amazing tutorials on YouTube. Just type in like how to create X, and someone's probably done a YouTube video of it. I'm actually planning on creating a lot more YouTube content, so if there's something that you particularly want to see, obviously write it in the comments below. Okay, so how have we made this? We've got all these different things in here, all these different assets. We've got the actual bottle itself. This label is essentially an image overlaying the actual bottle. So it looks like it's stuck on top, but actually it's just strategically positioned. You can see if I get rid of this, move this around, you'll see that this is actually just an overlay. And then we've got the cap material. So this is matte cap. And as you can see, you can change this super easily. These are the different matte caps that come automatically with Spline, but you can actually upload your own by clicking here and then replacing that image with whatever you have. So say you've got some other image, which is this screenshot of a project that I'm working on, then what you can do is change that to normal, and you'll see we've essentially created this horrific looking cap with the image of the website that I'm working on. Now, obviously we don't want that, so I'm going to change that back. But you get the point. You can do a lot in 3D in Spline. Okay, cool. Then what? Well, what you want to do is to create a website on Webflow, which is also free. So if I show you that, go to my dashboard, and you'll see that we've got a project here with the Grazza website. Again, with Webflow, it's free to have 2 projects in your file. So there's no excuse, guys. You can actually learn how to build an immersive 3D website for free. Yes, it requires a bit of time and a little bit of effort, but it's actually very, very doable. Is it ever going to load? Let's see. While that's loading, I'm just going to explain how this happens. So if you click export, then you'll get this modal which will pop up. Now, what you want to do is have a little look at these 2 tabs, overview and play settings. Now in play settings, what you'll do is you'll have all sorts of different things. You'll be able to turn off the logo that will appear on your file. If you pay for Spline, you can get rid of the logo. If you don't, then you'll have the logo as a little overlaying watermark, but I think Spline's $9 a month. I mean, it's well worth it. Background color, if you wanted to have the background color in your embed on the website, this green color, you can, or you can just hide it. You want the page to scroll while you're actually, if someone's scrolling on the website over this, I've kept that on. Cursor, I don't want the cursor to change. You can have the cursor change from this little arrow to something else, but I don't think there's any point in doing that unless you're wanting people to click, which they need that little pointer cursor. Orbit, pan, zoom, soft orbit, these are effects that you can have. So for example, if someone moves their cursor one way or another, if say they move their cursor to the left, you can have the actual asset turn to the left. If you want them to, if they move their cursor to the right, then the cursor can move to the right. What I do is generally I turn off all the animations within Spline itself and do the animations within Webflow. And I'll show you in Webflow why I do that. But okay, this is basically all turned off. Something that's important to say is that your asset needs to load quickly. If it doesn't load quickly, then no one's going to get to the website. It's going to hurt SEO. It's generally bad. Okay, so what you can do is you can change the quality of this by lowering the image quality or the geometry quality. So what this means is that essentially the more polygons you have in your design, the slower it takes to load. You can see here total polygons 17,148. I've worked on projects where there's 10 megabytes of polygons. There's just a ton of data that needs to be loaded for the asset to load on a website, and it kills the website. So it's best to try and reduce this as much as possible by deleting things that are superfluous to the design, right? Also, if you have tons and tons of different materials, this will slow down the site. If you have tons of lights all over your project, it will also slow down the site. A way to basically make almost artificial light is use a matte cap. Use a shiny surface that already has the shine within the asset itself, so that you don't need loads of lights pointing at it. You see there are 0 lights pointing at this, but it looks like there are lights pointing at this. That is because of this matte cap effect that I've got on the bottle, okay? So there's various different ways that you can do this, but just check this before putting the file in your design, because otherwise, you've made something that's way too heavy and it can't be used in your project. Okay, now we're in here. What I've got is a Webflow project where I've actually embedded this file. Now, how have I actually done that? Well, you're going to need to know a little bit about Webflow to do this, but essentially I've set up the project. I've got a style guide in here. I used Lumos, so shout out to Timothy Ricks if you're familiar with him and his videos. If you're just starting with Webflow and you're like, this is all really scary, don't worry. Just go to Timothy Ricks's YouTube channel, watch a few videos, and you'll learn loads very, very fast. But you can basically clone this style guide, which means that your website will be consistent across all the different breakpoints, and you'll have a beautiful looking website, hopefully. Okay, so we're back in this homepage. Okay, now what we've got here is we've got we've got this thing called Spline container, which, as you can see here, is 100 viewport width and 100 viewport height, which basically means it's the whole way of the screen across and the whole way of the screen top to bottom. Okay, and then what I've done is I've got this Spline wrapper. This is actually the Spline asset, so it would be better if I put Spline asset so we don't get confused. But this is 100% width and 100% height, so it's basically filling this container. Okay, note this is fixed. What that means is that this is fixed to the screen. It covers the whole screen the whole time, so that on scroll you've got this scroll effect where it's in the middle of the screen and it scrolls down. Okay, so fixed. Okay, now if we see the published site, you'll see that there's a few other things going on that I won't bore you with, but essentially what we've got is we've got a loading page, which means that that means that the Spline asset has time to load. Again, Timothy Ricks has a great video on how to do this. WebBay, Keegan O'Leary has a great video on how to do this as well, but it just means that you have a little time for this Spline asset to load. Now, if you reload the page, then this loads a lot faster, which means that if someone's coming back to the site, they don't have to go through a tedious load process. Okay, this is in the middle of the screen. How is it in the middle of the screen, Jack? Well, we've got an embed. So what I've got here is this Spline asset. You can add your own Spline asset by scrolling down to Spline scene. Once you put your Spline scene in, you'll have this Spline scene settings, and it says URL, and you're like, what the hell's that? Well, this URL is simply from the viewer. You've got this prod.spline.design and then gobbledygook and then Spline scene. This is basically your asset. Okay, so what we need to do is to copy this whole URL. So copy, link copy to clipboard. Then we go back to this and we paste it in there. Now, every time we update, every time we update this and click update viewer, we need to go back to Webflow and then we need to click reload Spline scene. Okay, so if you change stuff in Spline and you want it to change on your website as well, then you need to click both Update Viewer in your asset, Update Viewer, and then Reload Spline Scene. And that will mean that those two assets change according to whatever you've set in Spline. Cool. So now we've got this asset in here, and this asset is set to the middle of the screen. We've got that inside a fixed container, so as you can see, it stays. But how do you create this effect where you can actually see that it's a 3D asset and not a 2D? Well, it's actually surprisingly easy to do. Remember, we can do all the animation of the asset within Webflow itself. And the reason for that is because you might want to have an animation that starts on page scroll, for example, and you might want it to stop at a certain point on your website, i.e. 50% of the way down the page. Now, you can do some animations within Spline, but if you're going to put the asset within a Webflow website, I urge you to actually focus on doing the animations within Webflow itself. It's a lot, you have a lot more control. And what I've found is that the actual animations themselves are less buggy and kind of glitchy. I just find that it's a little bit of a smoother experience if you do everything within Webflow itself. So if we go to interactions, we see while page is scrolling, okay? So we've got the Grazia bottle. If we click on that, you'll see a load of different things that are happening in here. Now, what we've got is we've got the load animation. So this will basically scale. So this sets how big the bottle is from the get-go, from 0% of the scroll, which is at the top of the page. So you can see here I've got play scroll animation, and that is while page is scrolling. So the second this starts to scroll, this animation will trigger on desktop, tablet, phone landscape, phone portrait, so on all the different breakpoint sizes, okay? And then we've got this header image move. So what we've got, if I preview this, you'll see that the animation, as much, so this bottle's going down, but also this image is actually moving up. So it has a kind of exaggerated effect, okay? And then we've got this header layout. Now that's this text here, okay? So I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but there's a slight animation from the text happening here. And then you've got the actual asset itself. Now currently this is set to this position 770 from 0% scroll. But then what we want it to do is at 100, so i.e. the bottom of this scroll, we want it to be set to the right, and we want it to have tilted back slightly. So we've got spline asset, and then you can see here it's a cross. We've actually tilted it back. So on the x-axis, it's slightly tilted back. Then we've got y here. So it's tilted across, you see. And quite liked it like that, actually. And one thing to note is that if you're setting this up, you need to make sure that all the different measurements that you've got here from x, so I've got this x-axis, y, these three need to be accounted for here. You need to have some kind of number change here. If not, Spline throws a wobbly or Webflow throws a wobbly, I'm not sure which, but basically your asset won't work. So you just need to make sure that these, whatever settings you have here, whatever axes you have a number here, you need to have another number here, even if it's just the same number. Say it's not actually moving on the x-axis at all from the top to the bottom. You still need to have like 0 and 0, okay? So you see we've got this header rock. This header rock is moving as well. So that's this overlaid element here. But as you can see, I mean, we've got an asset that is moving. Ooh, that's a bit problematic. That should not be happening. So we've got the rocks moving too fast. Dwayne the Rock Johnson. It's moving actually faster than this scrolling animation here, so I need to sort that out. But you can see that all these different little elements can combine to have quite an interesting effect, where you've got a 3D asset that moves through the scroll position, and interesting things can happen. If you were to think about this from different websites, you can do some really interesting things to create more of an immersive experience. Just seen, I need to do a lot of work to ensure that this works. Also, I need to make sure that this section is above this olive oil, and maybe think about how this design is going to change on mobile compared to desktop. Because as you can see, we've got a load of real estate on the desktop, whereas on mobile, we don't. Suddenly, we've got no space for this asset to move. So we might need to change how this asset behaves on mobile or different screen sizes, for example, okay? Maybe I need to put never blended this section in an overlay, or on a card, for example, so that the asset can keep scrolling behind, and that it won't actually kind of drown out the text, so that we ensure that there's accessibility. In Timothy Ricks's style guide, there's actually different cards. Where is it? Sizes, flexbox. There's actually cards that you can copy and paste, which are really, really useful to ensure. Yeah, see how we've got these style guide card wrap. There's card. This is the type of thing that I'm thinking for mobile actually might work better. Anyway, ramble schmamble. Hopefully that helps, guys. You can see the process from start to finish. A little bit about Figma. How might this behave? How might I actually do this? Then I created the asset within Spline. I actually created the asset here, so that the label overlays the bottle. And obviously this is a work in progress, but you can kind of see some ideation. Then I went to Spline, built something, or created this asset. And then finally from there, after ensuring that it's optimized, or as optimized as possible, we've then got the actual web page in here, which we can design and build. A lot more to do here, but we're well on the way. Hopefully that all makes sense. Let me know if there's any other questions that you guys have off the back of all that.